Hello, welcome back to the Wizard Den. Today I'm going to be speaking about one of my first experiences ever. Alright, now this is with an angel. Back in the day, I was Christian, and I was very right hand path oriented when I first got into magic, okay? I didn't know anything about balance yet. I was afraid of most everything. All I was open to was angels at the time. So I was trying to learn as much about the occult as possible while staying, um, on a certain path. So I was limiting myself to a lot of knowledge. That being said, I found out about the angel Raziel, okay, which is the keeper of secrets, something like that. God's secrets. I don't forget what the hell his name means. But anyway, this was in the very beginning of my occult career. I knew nothing about magic. I had tried to do many evocations and failed. I was too afraid to do an invocation because I, was afraid of possession, stuff like that. Very amateur at the time. I didn't know why my evocations were failing. I knew very little, okay? I had one day read the book Archangels of Magic by Damon Brand. I had went through and read the entire section of the evocation section. I got those words of power you're supposed to speak. I had written it down on paper. I drew his sigil on paper, as well as had the book open to the sigil for Raziel as well. Now, I began to put it all together. I sat down in my room. In the bathroom. It was the bathroom. I had 5 candles lit, just tea candles. 5 white tea candles. I was asking for psychic abilities, right? That was my intention. So I had got all the stuff together. I started chanting the words. I tried to meditate. I tried to get to the right state. I started to chant the words that I was supposed to. And I got to an extent where I was getting tired of saying the words. And then at that point, I was noticing nothing. Like I said at the time, I didn't have much in the way of abilities. And I didn't have an understanding of why I was failing. So I was just chanting, and I wasn't experiencing the things that I said I was supposed to experience, so I moved on. I moved on to the next part, which was calling the angel, doing a conjuration. And at the time, I was very new to it, so my conjuration sucked. But I said it quite a few times, and I didn't experience nothing, right? But I was in an altered state of consciousness. All the same, I was meditated, and I got in this weird state. I couldn't hear anything. I couldn't feel the energy in the room. Nothing that people say that they can experience. So I closed my eyes, and my intention with that was I was going to meditate some more. Now, what happened from there was pretty crazy. I closed my eyes, and I began to see a very vivid vision. I was sitting there, and I had my intestines ripped open. And they were pulling these characters in gray robes. It was blacked out. I couldn't see their faces. But these characters, tall characters in gray robes, were sitting here pulling out these gray tentacles from out of my stomach. It looked like intestines. It was the most insane thing ever. But they were pulling them out of me. It was 2 or 3 of them. And they were just yanking these things out of me. And they would look at me and they would pass them out. And it was very weird. And I was like, Raziel, is this you? And then they, one of them looked up at me. And it just stared at me with the most weird, intense stare. At the time, I didn't have intuition, so I couldn't feel nothing either. I couldn't I didn't have clear audience. I couldn't hear. I couldn't do much of anything. But it felt very weird, right? Later on, I believe I had went to kind of ask about the situation, because that was the end of it. I kind of got freaked out and I left, right? And I left the situation. I stopped. I went into another room. I called it a day. I was like, it probably won't be a while before I evoke Raziel again. I was afraid. And then I went into the other room. I asked my fiance what she thought of it, and she had no clue. I asked a couple other practitioners what they thought. They had no clue either. A couple days later, I got this intuitive message that what it meant is that the tentacles that they were pointing out was connections to other people. It was a connection from me to another person, to another thing. I had too many of these connections rooted between me and something else. My attention was everywhere. My energy was being pulled from every which direction. And what was happening is Raziel was disconnecting all these connections I had that were acting as blockages. And because I didn't have intuition, I interpreted it completely wrong, but he was doing me a favor. And he showed me through a vision what was happening and what he was doing. He was taking those connections and he was removing them so I could be more tapped into the one source, the one channel I did want open. I, at the time, had way too many channels opened. And he was disconnecting a lot of the channels. A lot of the channels were polluted. I had too much going on, too many creatures drawing on my energy at the time, vampirizing me, if that's what you want to call it. I hate that word. It's really cringy. But I had creatures, astral creatures, pulling on my energy. I had connections with people in real life that I was giving my energy freely to. I had, actions, activities, thoughts that my energy was being given to too much. My energy was everywhere. It was scattered, and I couldn't focus it. I couldn't harness my energy and my psychic abilities because it was everywhere. And I got that message 3 days later after asking Raziel, literally right then after the evocation, and again the next day, what that meant and if that was him. And then I got the intuitive message through my mind's eye what it was all about. I had been reading again, and he sent it to me again almost through a vision, but this time it was just words in my mind when I closed my eyes, and it was the answer. So that is my first ever experience with a successful evocation and the results and what I experienced. Peace.